Hi, my name is Brian Potter. I'm a culinary arts teacher at Mount Healthy High School, and we are going to make a beef taco pie tonight for the make dinner at home. Okay, so for our pie shell, I have 1 cup of masa flour, about a half a cup of water, and 1 egg that I've beaten. I'm going to add my masa flour here and start adding my water. I'm not adding all the water here at once because sometimes the flour has more moisture in it and it won't need as much water. So just continue adding water in small amounts once you get towards the end where it gets to a dough here. We're just looking for something that's going to easily coat the sides here. It's also not too dry. You're more than welcome to change out the water for a vegetable or a chicken stock. You can also add some seasonings to your masa flour here to give the shell some flavor if you would like as well. So I'm going to transfer my dough over to my pie pan. I'm just going to kind of use my hands to kind of push this around. This dough is kind of sticky still, so it's not going to work really well to try to roll this out. If you wet your fingers a little bit with some water or put a little bit of oil on them, the masa won't stick as easily to your fingers. You can get a smoother shape here. Just try to work it so that you have an even layer all the way around. Be kind of careful with your corners, your edges here. They tend to get kind of thick. Okay, once you get your pie shell formed in your pie tin, we're going to go ahead and bake this for about 20 minutes in a 350-degree oven. It's what's called blind baking. It'll help set this shell. Because if we add all of our ingredients in here and then try to bake it, the shell will usually come out kind of raw or undercooked. So if you're not sure how to dice your onion, I have a half of my onion here. I cut it through the center of the root. This would be where the top is growing out of the ground. The first thing I'm going to do after I've cut it is remove the skin here. This paper is inedible, and usually this first layer, when you cook it, becomes very papery. So I like to remove that as well. From here, we're going to place our end that had the root on it away from us. We're going to hold our knife. The best way to have the most control is to use your index and thumb and pinch the blade and then wrap your fingers around it. It kind of becomes part of your whole hand here. Another good tip is to use the claw method when you're cutting. You want to have your fingers kind of like a claw, and you want to run your knife against your knuckle here. So as long as you don't bring the edge of this knife above your knuckle, you can't cut yourself. So as we're cutting this, for a dice, we want to make cuts across here at every 1/4 inch. So I'm going to cut down. I'm not cutting all the way through because I want to leave this back attached. Just try to make even cuts all the way across, letting the knife run against your finger until you get to the end. We're going to turn it 90 degrees. Again, keep our claw, come over a 1/4 inch, and slice down. Be careful of your thumb. A lot of times as I'm moving my fingers back here, my thumb sometimes will stick out. So please be cautious. Move your whole hand back, not just your fingers. When you get to an end that's too small for you to hold, you can just set it down and do the same thing. Come across about every 1/4 inch, turn it, do the same thing. So you can get a lot more onion out of your cut. You can even continue to cut here if you'd like. So you should have about that much left with that root piece in it. So here I have all of our ingredients for our filling. So I have my ground beef, I have my tomatoes, my diced onion, my canned beans. These were rinsed and drained. That helps remove a lot of this excess sodium that are in these. If you don't get a low sodium version, they add a lot of salt to this, so rinsing them helps remove some of that. Same with the corn. I drained this and rinsed it to get rid of extra sodium there as well. I have my taco seasoning and my shredded cheese. If your ground beef's not already thawed, the best way to thaw this is to leave it in the refrigerator on some kind of a tray, but leave it in there for a day or two for it to thaw out. If it is frozen and you need to use it that day, place the package into a container in your sink and run cold water over it until it thaws. You really don't want to leave it on a countertop. It has a chance to start building up a lot of bacteria growth and can make you sick. So I'm going to set my pan on my stove. I'm going to turn this on to a medium-low heat. And I'm going to add my ground beef to the pan. I'm going to start to break this up. I'm using a rubber spatula. This happens to be a high temp rubber spatula. Most red handle ones are high temp, but this part won't melt when you use it on a pan. So if you don't have one of these, you can use a wooden spoon or a pair of tongs or something like that to do this. Okay, now that my ground beef is browned, I'm going to turn off my heat. There's a lot of fat in here, so I'm going to drain this off. I'm going to use a strainer with a bowl. I'm going to drain the meat into here to let the fat run off. When you get done with this, please don't drain this down your sink. It'll clog your pipes up, or the grease will cool down and coat your pipes. So put this in the trash after it's cooled down enough. So I have my ground beef in here. I'm letting the fat drain off, so I'm going to set this over to the side. I've gotten rid of most of my fat that was left over, but there's still a little bit left. I'm going to turn my heat back on to a medium-low, and I'm going to saute my onions in this little bit of beef fat that's left. Depending on how much you like your onions cooked, you can just put these in here until they become translucent to soften them up, or you could let them cook and start to caramelize a bit to add a little bit more flavor. Whenever you're sauteing something, sometimes you get this browning on the bottom of the pan. As long as it's not burnt, it will taste good. So we are going to, what we're going to deglaze the pan. So we're going to use our tomato in juice on here. And it'll help us loosen this up to add this flavor back into our dish. I'm just taking my spatula and kind of scraping the bottom with this liquid, mixing in the onion. Okay. We're going to go ahead and add our drained ground beef. And I'm going to sprinkle my taco seasoning over the beef and work to mix that in. Okay, once that's mixed in, I'll go ahead and add my corn and my beans. I'm going to kind of fold this in just to mix this together. Probably should have done a slightly bigger pan. I believe this is a 10-inch saute pan, so if you have something a little bit bigger, that would be great. You could also use a larger saucepan or stock pot that has a larger bottom or higher sides. Okay, there's our mixture. I would suggest tasting it, seeing how it tastes to you. If you feel it needs more seasoning, go add some more taco seasoning if you have it. Black pepper, some cayenne. Okay, here's my taco shell that's come out of the oven. This was a 9-inch shell, about 1.5 inches tall. So in this size pie shell, I'm getting about half of this mixture. So if you'd like, make another pie shell. Again, a cup of masa, about a half cup of water, and an egg. And you could have a second one. If you don't, you could just use this for on some tortilla shells or some flour tortillas and kind of make a burrito or a taco with this. Okay, from here I'm just going to coat the top of this with some cheese. Kind of make sure everything's covered evenly. That's pretty good for me. If you like a lot of cheese, you can go ahead and add more on. It may just take a little bit longer for it to cook and melt on top. So I'm going to go ahead and put this back in the 350-degree oven to melt our cheese on top. If you're ever baking a pie or this here and you have a sheet tray, I might suggest that you put this on a sheet tray. What that'll do is give you more support Also, if it overflows for some reason, it's going to go on your pan, which will be a lot easier to clean up than the bottom of your oven. Okay, so here's my taco pie. At this point, you can start to cut this and serve it basically like a pie.